Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Governance and Operations Committee meeting on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. And also just to let you know that members of the public can be present in the council committee room during the meeting, but also public members can observe the meeting via Zoom. The webinar will also be recorded and published to the city's YouTube site. So the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda and the recommendation that the agenda for the Governance and Operations Committee meeting be adopted as circulated. Councillor Martin and Councillor Hanson. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. This afternoon, we do have a delegation and we have Heather Glenn Durgasoff here to talk about the Plan H grant and the revised community plan. Hey, Heather, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I do apologize. We had to make some last minute changes. I was hoping to be there in person, but I am sick. So I am Zooming in today. And I do have a presentation I thought I would share, but I don't have to either. I can just speak to it as well. Let me see if technical issues will be a concern or not. Okay, so that's the presentation. If you can, yay, I got some thumbs up. Awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to give an update on the Plan H grant that the City of Trail and the Skills Center collaboratively worked on. It started last October and is now pretty much all wrapped up and completed. So I just wanted to give an update to Council and answer any questions you might have around it. So just a bit of background, the Skills Center about 2 years ago was approached by the Tamarack Institute to work on an Ending Working Poverty systems change project with 5 other communities across the country. And the Skills Center happily jumped on board that opportunity. And then I came online at that time to support that work. At the time, it was noted that 42% of Canadians that were living in poverty were actually working. So of that, quite a large portion of our population that is in poverty are working. And so the idea was to come up with strategies and actionable goals to reduce poverty and promote healthy communities. So part of this, what the Tamarack has called the Building Community Resilience by Ending Working Poverty project, part of this was creating a leadership team in our community, in the community of Trail, that is comprised of a number of individuals, those with lived experience, business community, nonprofit, people from the nonprofit community, and then also we do have one elected representative that sits at that table. And it was from this this leadership table that we started talking about, well, what can we do to increase the financial wellness of those in our community, especially those that are working but living in poverty? And how can we change the systems to reduce working poverty and work together to do that? And just going back a little bit further, in 2017, there were 2 plans that were created, one a regional plan around poverty reduction, and the other one also a regional plan around healthy communities. And they were both happened to take place at the same time, but by 2 very different organizations. So the poverty reduction plan was primarily, I guess, was led by the Skills Center, and the Healthy Communities Plan was led by a variety of people in community, including the school district, Family Action Network, and the Columbia Basin Trust, and a few others. But they very much overlapped in a lot of ways. So we thought, why don't we revisit those plans with this new lens of working poverty? And it just so happened that the Plan H grant, that looks at healthy communities through an equity deserving lens, came online. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to partner with the city to reassess these plans. And look at it through this lens. And again, when I'm talking about I'm talking about the leadership table. So it was the leadership table that really drove this piece. So what was the Plan H grant, or what was the purpose? What was the overview? So looking at all the variables that affect people in trail that are working but still having a hard time making ends meet. The goal was to enhance supports and services by revisiting the 2 plans that were created in 2017 and applying an equity lens in the city of Trail. Those that are working and in poverty do tend to be female more often. They also tend to be lone parent households and or seniors in our communities. So in consultation with the leadership table and communities, and we'll get into sort of some of the details around this, but we decided to take those 2 plans and merge them into one because there were so many overlapping pieces. And so we updated the plan based on the work that we did and have called it Thriving for All, a plan for healthy communities in our rural city. So we did a number of consultations. We did we cast a very wide net for a survey, and we got 103 responses in our community around financial wellness, what we can do better as a community to support those that are working and in poverty. And then we also hosted 2 engagement sessions, one in February, one in June, where I think around 20 to 25 people attended respectively for those, where we could really dig really deep into the issues around working poverty and how do we create healthy communities. And from that data, from both the engagement sessions and the surveys, there were 6 what we've identified as pillars of change that came forward. So one is housing, no surprise, I'm sure, food security, health, social, and community services, learning, inclusive and vibrant economies, and physical activity and community belonging. So on this slide, you'll notice that there's an asterisk next to 3 of those pillars of change. And really what that means is since 2017, what was in those plans still needs to stay in those plans. As you know, with any systems change work, especially when you throw in a pandemic in there, it takes some time to make movement. And so after reviewing the data and reviewing the existing plans, all of the recommendations that were identified in the 2017 plans are still current and relevant today. So we didn't make any new changes to those. We just included them in this new plan. So housing, I'll just quickly go over the 5 tenets that were in the original plans, which is ensuring the availability of data and information to support affordable housing, facilitate coordination amongst organizations to create and operate low-income and subsidized housing, develop mechanisms for low-income households to access information on housing, increase the number of subsidized rental housing options, and advocate for support by government to develop and operate affordable housing. So those are all pretty much still very relevant, and things are in the pipeline for that, as we know, and so we just left them as is as they continue to roll out. Food security is one that we have made some changes based on the data that we gathered. I'm not going to read this whole slide, but basically what was very evident was that we need a more robust food security system, one in which each partner that works in food security is not only talking with, but also working and collaborating with to create sort of a closed loop system for food security. So it starts from, how do we grow nutritious food at home, in the community? How do we prepare those nutritious foods through food preservation, through community kitchen programming? And then how do we divert that food back into community, whether that's through food banks or, the market, and just making, this very robust system and having all the players come to the table to ensure minimal food waste and to also provide families and individuals the tools they need to grow and sustain their own food. And when they can't, seek out other avenues of sources of food in our community. And the idea around that is if they can produce their own food or some of their own food, then they increase their financial wellness, because it will free up some funds to go towards other things, whether that's recreation or other things that will support their wellness. So this is, so this stuff is already being worked on as we speak. This is already started to launch in a lot of ways in our community, and the Skill Center is taking the lead on some of this work. Health and social and community services. So consistent promotion of community-based programs and events, something that we heard over and over again at many of the engagement points, whether it was through survey or in person, was this idea is they don't really know what is happening in community. They know about services, they know about service providers, but they don't actually know what is happening. So when are the meals at the church? When does the food bank operate? What are the gardening programs offered to low-income families and individuals? So they don't know how to access the actual programs. So we heard that quite frequently. So we added this piece about expanding the navigator model. We do have navigators, community navigators in our community. So just looking at expanding that, introducing a community hubs of programs. I do know that we have a community, hubs of service providers, but again, it doesn't necessarily indicate what the programs are that are to support low-income individuals and families. So looking at that, encouraging the creation of a centralized community space in the downtown core. Encourage and support opportunities that lead to co-location of services whenever possible. So that's around like something around a neighborhood house, which I know has also been in conversations for many years. Promote increased access to affordable transportation options. So again, this is also very alive and relevant right now, but that was something that also was very pertinent to the people that we're speaking with. So, also increasing or lowering the costs for youth age 13 to 17 for public transportation. Explore expansion of community-based transportation options, whether that's rideshare or on-demand or active transport, and increase access to transportation in the Oneida Junction area, Red Mountain, and the airport. And then lastly, promote barrier-free access to low-income households to recreations, arts, culture in the region. So in 2017, they looked at this idea of a common access card, which we do currently have in our city. It's just expanding that now to include things such as arts and entertainment and potentially some transportation options as well. Learning, this again is something that we didn't change at all. I just looked at to see if there was any new things that were happening, and there really isn't. So I've left that as was in 2017. So continue to offer learning and academic upgrading for low-income individuals and improve access to barrier-free supports for families, children, and youth. Same with the vibrant, inclusive economy. That was nothing new came from our conversations in community. So we just left this as is. So promote the living wage, promote the employment of lower skilled individuals by supporting the development of essential skills, support the development and a diversification of the local economy, and improve the availability of and access to childcare. So these are all things that we are still currently progressing towards and still quite alive for our community. So we just left that in there as is, and nothing new came up, like I said, in the conversations. The other tenet that we did change was physical activity and community belonging. So promote and support physical activity. So support active play programs in parks to promote physical activity for all ages. Continue to find ways to break down financial and social barriers to participate in recreational activities, and promote regional transportation options to facilitate movement between communities. And then also, this sort of goes along with the tenet around the community services piece, but promote and support community belonging through improving social and community development, and consider how space can impact individuals and community belonging. Foster social interaction and community engagement through hosting regular community events and volunteerism and educational workshops, that sort of thing. Create inclusive and accessible public spaces, support cultural expression and diversity, and then create that program hub of information regarding services, events, and programs that are free or low cost to users. And that is it. Sorry, that was a lot of information, I know. But if you do have any questions, I would be happy to answer any. And I can stop this just so I can see everybody in the room if you don't mind. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. That was a lot of information.
It
A lot
was.
of good. Yes. I don't know if council has any questions for Heather. Councilor Benson.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for the presentation. Couple questions from me. At the second community table, we identified some working groups based off of the 5 pillars, and just wondering what is there a plan moving forward for those?
Yes, there absolutely is. So we do already have a transportation working group started. So that one's ongoing, or I shouldn't, yeah, it is ongoing. And then the community hub piece, we will be looking at that probably early in the new year. There has been some conversation with myself and some other service providers around that. So, but we're going to officially probably start that in the new year. And then food security, the food security piece, yes, that one is definitely already well on its way. And we are still trying to sort out the bigger framework, but a lot of services are already either have funding in place or programs have already started up. So it's just a matter of really linking and strengthening the connections that are currently in existence for that one.
And then other communities were also provided this grant. I remember there was like 5 across Canada, and just wondering, is there any like knowledge sharing between from what was learned?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that our leadership table is absolutely invited to attend those. We have cohort calls every 6 weeks or so, and our leadership table has attended in the past, and they continue to be invited to attend those. Right now, I can just share with you that we're really focusing on the living wage piece in that cohort, and how businesses can support systems change around ending working poverty.
And then finally, you've done a lot of work on the poverty reduction portfolio, and just wondering, was there anything new from this that you didn't know before or that surprised you from this?
Not particularly. I do have to say the piece around the community programming and the navigation piece, because that is definitely something that I've worked on for almost 10 years now. I wasn't necessarily surprised, but I am a bit not disappointed, but that we haven't made much headway in that regard. And so the committee that will come together to talk about that community hub piece in the new year, hopefully will breathe a bit more hope into that piece, and something that, yeah, and just more ideas and thoughts around it. So.
You're welcome. Councilor Cashel.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. Do we have any data, Heather, on how many people living in Trail right now would be considered persons living in poverty?
Yeah, so we work with a gentleman named John Stapleton. He used to work with Statistics Canada, and so he provides us the data. He's one of our partners in the Tamarack Institute. So he works with us quite well. We don't have anything recent, meaning recent in the last 2 years, other than the data that I pool when I can. The challenge comes because we're a small demographic, but there is a little bit of challenges around that. But yeah, John can definitely get us data specific to Trail in the best way that he can. So if there's something specific that we need, then he is our go-to for that piece.
But you don't know that percentage at this.
Not
particular point.
offhand. I can certainly get that though and give it back to you. Absolutely.
And then one final question, is there a housing needs assessment on your agenda, and has one been done? And if not, like, is it on the radar to maybe have one done, a housing needs assessment?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure when the last one was done, a while ago. It is not something on my agenda personally, but I would advocate for one to be done, and I would help support that process. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My question was kind of along the same lines as Councillor Cashel regarding the housing needs assessment. You know, as much as there's a need for housing, the $1 million question with a lack of data is what kind of housing do our families and our communities need? You know, would a family need a townhouse, or would they need a condo, or do they need space with a yard? As we're looking at our OCP and opportunities for, you know, where things might make sense, it would be really lovely to get some information or something that we could work collaboratively to get information from some of these families of what their needs look like for housing.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agreed. I think I do work on the living wage piece, and I do know that we actually end up having to use Nelson's most recent housing needs assessment because we don't have one that's reflective of the current times. I don't know if I would be the right person to do that work, but I could certainly look into it and see who would be best suited for that. And absolutely be willing to come to the table to advocate for it and to connect people. So yeah, I could look at who would be the best person for that.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Heather. That's it for questions.
Thank you.
For coming this afternoon. That was good. And we'll see you at the next meeting. She's frozen. Okay. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is communications, and I'll pass that on to Ms. Butler.
Thank you, through the chair. This is just bringing back the council procedures bylaw for the final look. Our discussion about changing, you know, the language around deputy mayor and acting mayor. We did a little further research, and acting mayor is common language being used and also supported in the community charter. Deputies, so we have left it acting for everything. And I think that's okay. Some interesting developments. Ms. Lucchini was just at a workshop where one of the lawyers from he's at Young Anderson, made a comment that having a public input or a question period is something that he is advising is not a good idea anymore. It is not the public's meeting. I would tell you that if you go onto the Ombudsman's website, they will speak differently about that. So I think having some parameters around what we have right now is probably a really good first step to see how it goes. And one of the other comments was just the best practice. But I don't think we need to have that in a all I have, we haven't changed much on it. We do have a legislative requirement to publish that we will be changing the bylaw or adopting a new bylaw. So I'm hoping that advertisement goes in this week and then the following week, and then we can bring it forward for bylaw readings. So at the next regular meeting, we should see first, second, and third readings of the bylaw. And if there's any questions at this time, or
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Benson.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little foggy at the last meeting as I was quite sick. So just some things that came to me over the couple of weeks. First of all, in 4.6, when it talks about the agenda, under B, it's like very specific. It says like 12 o'clock to have the reports to the corporate officer, but then on C, it just says end of the day for council, and I was hoping just to give that a time. Because the end of the day means something different to everybody, and I was hoping just, like, if it's 4:30, can we just 4:30,
under
4.6, that's.
two, sorry. What page are you on there?
So much. Well, here it says 12, and then there's end of day. I'm just hoping to have a time. Just as many of us do work now, it's nice to.
Yeah, so the reason we don't have a set time is it could be problematic for us if we have a technical problem when we can't get the agenda posted. But end of day would refer to our end of day.
Right,
So, if we put in there 4:30 and we can't meet that, now we're against our bylaw.
right,
So that's why I would ask for flexibility there. Things happen.
okay. And then on question period, we talk about the gallery, but now that we've opened our meetings to like Zoom, the gallery just talks about the people in the room. And I've noticed we don't ask, if someone has a hand up on Zoom, we're not asking questions from someone that maybe can't access City Hall. And wondering if we
And
would be doing, this is under question period. We talk about the gallery, does that include the
That would include
people online?
People online are included in, yeah.
Okay, good. And then just a question for, clarity, where is it talks about the public notice posting location, where is that at City Hall?
We have one at the front door.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, of course, our website.
Yeah.
When you walk in the front door, it's right there.
Oh,
And the bulletin board there.
okay, perfect, thanks. That was it for me, just some clarifying questions.
Was there any conversation, Ms. Lucchini, about the videoing of our council meetings and how long they stay online and?
That topic was not raised.
Oh, okay. Does council have any other questions?
Sure. Do we know, if we want to have the videos taken down after a year, or whatever it is? Is that something that needs to be in your bylaw?
No, it doesn't need to be the procedures bylaw. We can have a separate, like, media
Policy.
policy or something like that, yeah. I don't know what the best practices are up there right now because of this sort of new wave, and I'm kind of sitting back to see what everybody else is doing and see what happens. I was just reading through some reports from the ombudsperson and that's definitely not their view right now.
Really,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just more public access and more transparency.
It is a bit confusing because when you are talking, when we go to any of the conferences or workshops, I know it's just maybe the smaller communities that aren't even recording their meetings, and then we have both of our meetings recorded, and I don't know, I just wondered what the procedure was. I mean, not that
I think we keep our pulse on what's happening and we'll just judge it from there.
Mhm. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'll move the recommendation. that the committee recommend council proceed with the required readings of the council procedure bylaw number 2946, 2024. Councillor Martin and Councillor Benson. All those in favor? That was carried, thank you. And item 3.2 is a contractor snow and ice control. And that would be over to Mr. McClure.
Yes, so again, bringing forward and I keep talking about this with the councils, we need to update some of our policy pieces because some of these, it's not that it's not important, but some of these are rather small items. We're basing our policy bringing forward that we've had this ability for contract. The pricing was good and the one thing of course that kind of makes people unsettled, but they did some daily asked our people that use this provider. We're not, there's any risk in the fact that it's lower than what we kind of been getting from the service from the previous vendor. So again, I think it's a good news story as far as snow clearing, because it is one of those ones that you sort of roll the dice on. Sometimes like last winter, there wasn't a lot of clearing of snow. So if you're a snow provider, then you do well. And if you have a big snow year, that's also an area where maybe it's not so lucrative. So it is one of those ones that we need to have the service. And I think that the fact that we really get in a time of inflation for, you know, to have something that's a little lower than what we've been paying. I think it's like, it's just successful RFP and we'll be recommending that the council will be us entering that contract.
Any questions for Mr. McClure? No, looks good. Okay, so the recommendation before you is that council approve the award of the contractor snow and ice control contract for the 2024-2025 winter season to Kootenai Property Maintenance in the amount of $2,665 per snow event, plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges. Councillor Benson and Councillor Butler. All those in favor? That was carried, thank you. And item number 4 is the resolution to adjourn the Governance and Operations Committee portion of the meeting and immediately resolve into in-camera meeting. And the recommendation is that pursuant to section 90 of the community charter, the public be excluded from the meeting as subject matter being considered relates to the following. The community charter section 91E, community charter section 91G, and the community charter section 91K. Councillor Hanson and Councillor Martin. Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.